Setting up some natural mosquito repellent, elephant dung. It's basically ends up being dried grass that is very good as like a fire brick, yeah. And so this keeps the mozzies away.
Hello, Dada.
Hello, Abby. All right.
Happy Chinese New Year.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Happy Chinese New Year. YouTube. Hello. All right. How you doing? All right. Let's just make this away so it's not glaring. How you all doing? All right. You having a good weekend? I'll leave the camera right there. So yeah, fireworks going off now because it's the official Chinese New Year. So that's on they're following a lunar calendar rather than the Gregorian calendar. So Chinese New Year is never on the same date. And this weekend is when many of the Thai Chinese and Chinese that are living in Thailand are celebrating their New Year. All right. So I can't remember how to say it in Chinese, but let's just see who's in the chat. All right. Are you enjoying the lights? Are you? Yeah, nice, isn't it? Yeah. Hello, Tony. All right. Hope you're having a good weekend. One man. Hello. I'm well, thank you. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. My wife isn't though. I was going to ask if anyone is having some big thyroid problems. I was asking if anyone would like to know if anyone knows of any natural herbal remedies for thyroid issues. I'm trying all sorts, but yes, it is hot. It's about 30. It's very humid at the moment. It's the hot season now, the dry season, or pretty much the high season. So this is when tourists love to come to Phuket because it is it's dry, and it will be until April, and then April is again following the lunar calendar. You have Songkran, which is the Thai New Year. And it will be on the full moon of kind of March, April, and then the rains will come. Yeah, so it kind of rains a lot of the time, really here. So you've only got about 4 months where it's pretty dry. And it does get very dry, but down here in Phuket it still remains quite humid. So it's not like desert heat. Yeah, different. You even see the difference as you come down from somewhere like Bangkok. Down south it gets greener and greener and greener, or more and more humid and jungle-like. So yeah, if you ever travel on the train from Bangkok down south, you see the plants and the greenery gets bigger and bigger, and it's quite fascinating in that respect. Let me just see who else is. Oh, I'm trying to scroll in. It's not showing the chat for me. Okay. Microdosing. Okay. Yeah. Possibly. Obviously, it'd be better to go for things that don't really affect the mental state. I'm trying some tincture. And all that, but yeah, my wife's suffering terribly from swelling, and she's very stiff, and yeah, it's probably a myriad of problems. Oh, hello, endemic bird expert Costa Rica. Hello, dear Phuket. Thank you very much indeed. Costa Rica, that's nice. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Nice to see you all. Yeah. I wanted to really... Jimbo, hello. talk about the usual kind of things we encounter as truth seekers or flat earthers, it's obviously very difficult to explain, and you know that it's not something that someone will get, or even this whole awakening process, really, unless they're going through it themselves. It's only people that are going through some kind of proactive awakening that will discover all sorts of things about the situation, the illusions, the delusions, the culture that we are all born and bred and brought up in, the family, the national culture, or whatever. There's so much that gets programmed into us, and we know that coming across something like flat Earth, which of course isn't the usual disk thing floating in space. It's just basically seeing and accepting the Earth as it is and the limitations of what we know, and exploring the possibility that there is much more beyond the limitations of what we know. And of course we also know that throughout history there have been mass propaganda campaigns to create consensus and have stories made up about certain things which, again, as we know, repeated often enough, appear to become fact and widely accepted and become a cultural belief. And as anyone has seen over the last couple of years, we've seen this whole process, and you can apply this whole process to all the other things that we may question and have trouble with, and often just accept and perceive as being everyday normal life, whether it's a financial system or a social system, a government, a form of governance, even labels for government, whether it's socialism or communism or democracy or capitalism. All these things are labels that obviously define a very broad thing, but then end up narrowing everything down. And of course, for each individual, will have a certain kind of interpretation. But what we really live in is a mixture of all of those things when it comes to the way we live. And of course, certain behaviors, certain cultural influences and things have been given labels, often attributed to a person or a set of or an ideal that has been pushed on society. So of course, when you talk about people such as Lenin or Mao Zedong or these other, so whether they're considered a dictator or a revolutionary, it's often their names that are attached to a certain system, and that's a belief that there's a certain way of life that should be followed, and so it becomes a religious thing. But of course, if you're born into a certain culture, often the most difficult thing to see, even if you're dishing out labels for this and that, is the label or the connotations of the label that applies to your own culture. This is the significant thing that we're all beginning our journey with, isn't it? It's that realization and understanding that we have unconsciously or subconsciously identified with some kind of sect or culture or belief or religion or religious way of thinking. And so you get words like brainwashing, mind control bandied about, herd mentality. We were talking about that today while watching a small herd of elephants. And so it's only when you start to even examine your own place and your own thought processes and your own what you believe to be involuntary thoughts and beliefs and actions and reactions. It's only when you start to really study those of yourself and observing those processes going on and creating thoughts and reactions and identity that we start to unravel everything else that has gone into creating certain identities. And so I think maybe just to really go with the real point I wanted to make was that if you're angry or attacking a flat earther or a truth seeker or someone coming at you with any new point of view or something that they may have researched or spent a long time thinking about, and if you react to that in a negative way, or if you have any reaction at all apart from one that is more of a natural recognition, and I think that's what a lot of us have felt when you come across certain truths or uncover certain mistruths, is there's this knowing that occurs, which is something much deeper than the average reaction that you might have, or even if you maybe tend to agree with something, there's something deeper that happens when you have something pointed out that you then recognize as something you always knew all along but didn't actually recognize it. For example, the horizon always being at eye level. A simple one that is I think is probably the same for many of you, that think, oh my gosh, yes. So that immediately debunks the the reality of how we see the world, immediately debunks all these heliocentric models, yeah, and maps and flight paths and things like that, and the geometry of a globe. It just boom, and you see further than you should, and that's it. That should be enough for anyone with an open mind that's ready to receive such information to open the floodgates and carry on with that exploration. But we know, while that might seem obvious to many of us who are on that journey,
Daddy's licking my hands.
oh, really? Yeah. It causes an immediate reaction, and usually an unconscious one, or within people that identify with a certain culture. And of course, many of those will be people that trust the science, they believe the science, and they've become very wrapped up in this idea or ideology that we are at the peak of some kind of linear evolutionary progress, or at least we're looking forward to this peak and then getting off this rock and exploring outer space and all that stuff, or create it, or integrating with AI, becoming smarter, becoming more intelligent. But that as we discussed the other day, that's not really, increasing our intelligence or ability to process information, for example, doesn't necessarily make us wiser. And I don't feel that, for example, AI and any integration of it would necessarily be, I'm not an advocate of it, but I don't think it would be really something that we should be too concerned about. It's been very helpful, the way information has been made available to us. It's wonderful. And you get your hands on a computer and the internet, and you can find out so much more. You can absorb more, you can learn more at a pace that really suits you. And we find that we are wonderful receptacles of information. Kids especially are like sponges, aren't they? And there's nothing wrong with that. You cannot stop progress. There's no point in trying to prevent something like that, or make laws and things about these kinds of things. That's just a constant battle. It is what it is. Progress is made in that respect, but that's just one particular direction. The progress we talk about making is coming to bringing things to our attention, or becoming conscious of this duality that we experience in this world, the duality of the cultural mindset that we're talking about, this conditioning that occurs now in our mind and becomes our thoughts, and then becomes our speech and becomes our action. Again, this goes back to this is why the Eightfold Path, the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path is is important to understand, because we're talking about right thought, right speech, right action. Yeah. So this is that awareness of what's going on in the mind. So you're becoming an observer of the mind, and then you're realizing that your mind has been conditioned in a certain way. And then, of course, what you also see at the same time then is those that are not ready to see that are still being carried along by all those cultural influences. And it's not until they have some kind of moment or moments, or make some kind of effort. And this is an effort as well, isn't it? It's not, this is the thing, it's like anything. If you want to achieve something, if you want to achieve some athletic skill or mental, well, we're talking about mental skills here, but if you make a comparison to some kind of athletic skill, you want to build a certain muscle mass, or you want to be able to run at a distance in a certain time, it takes practice, it takes training, and it takes some form of dedication. It's not just going to happen. You can't just wish it to happen. And so there's a lot of doing and discipline in that. So the same goes for the mind, and really being able to identify the mind, the training. And so you have to actually get into this training mode of noticing what you identify with, noticing those triggers that become emotional influences, and so you're identifying. So when you again, just this is coming to that point again where, if you're angry or attacking someone because of something that they've told you they believe, or have found out, or realized, or discovered, and you haven't done any research into that, or you haven't even been in the same place as that person, then you are identifying with a belief. Yeah, but often that's happening without knowing it. And I remember myself just having, after a certain amount of time within this whole flat Earth globe deconstruction progress, then you come to that realization that I was enshrined in a belief. I had a certain belief that had to be systematically broken down, and in that way it's very scientific. It's a scientific breakdown of observing and seeing what has influenced your thought, and it's usually propaganda. And it's funny how we can all read 1984, and most of us, even Globers and anti-flat earthers, I'm sure they've all read it or seen the movie even, and other things like that, that scholars have done, or experiments that have been done, and then we can know that these things go on, but it's still difficult to see ourselves being wrapped up in those things, isn't it? So it really takes effort to do. So none of this is it's the opposite to ignorance. And again, those people that are triggered that are out there defending the globe, or making nasty comments, making snide remarks, being sarcastic, you already know that they are consciously or unconsciously identifying with their own belief and their own conditioning, and they haven't made that effort to get out of it, or to recognize it. Yeah. So obviously there's something that happens in someone somewhere when at different stages of our lives, which triggers these observations, and often it could be careful because it's making the thing bounce. Often these are they can be traumatic things. They can be you're being taken to the point. Again, you might be asking many questions. Why is it like this? You might be feeling victimized, and but then also questioning why you feel victimized. What is it? What have they done? Or what is my role in that situation? How has that contributed to the situation escalating to where it is now? It does take two to tango, of course. So these situations can't come about unless there are two, and that includes ourselves being involved in that. So again, we often unconsciously get swept along with that. Yeah. Especially when it comes to things like raising your kids and things like that. Often these are just things that that happen because you were brought up in a certain way. What's that? Oh really? Oh yeah, it's oaks hanging in the air. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And you might recognize that, you might not. Sometimes you just unconsciously do the things that you were taught or that were done to you when you were a kid, and you do those to your parents. Sometimes you might intentionally not treat your kids in a certain way because you realize what happened to you. There are so many things to do there, but so you can then, you've got these unconscious things that happen, but then you can put thought into them too. But putting thought into things doesn't necessarily bring results either. It is more about letting go, and that's part of the discipline. And so that's the strange thing that's different from, for example, exercising and having the discipline to exercise is because you really are doing, and you are making an effort, but you're doing something that's really not doing. Whereas the awakening, or the making that progress towards continually identifying our programming is and not following the program is more of a letting go, but it's still a discipline, you know. So yeah. I tried to leave this till a time when everything had calmed down a bit. I've done all my dad duties, but I'm still getting a lot of demands for attention. So that's okay though. So it looks like we've got quite a few people in here. Sorry that my daughter's jumping up and down on the so, I'm trying to bring the chat up. Okay. You just say hello. Who have we got in here? All right. Totally light. Oh, okay. Hang on. Oh, sorry. Just give me a sec while I go back through these. Okay. Steve HV. Hello. Josh Corey of the Iron Realm. Hello. And knowing beyond knowing. Okay. Yes. Okay. One man. It's a knock-on effect. If that's a lie, and that means, yes, okay, and that scares most people from looking into things. Right, I think there is. I've sometimes heard that kind of admission that I would have to give up everything I know, and that's quite frightening, obviously. And there's actually this conscious decision not to go there, not to. Oh, okay. Abby, could you try not to be up and down so much because it's jiggling the phone here and it all fell off. Okay, it's all right. Just be careful. Thanks. Okay. What's that one, man? Don't pull the thread off the wool on a thread of your sweater. Josh Corey. Don't touch the foundation of a house of cards unless the house is rotten. Steve H. You've got to go. Okay. All right. See you, Steve. Okay. Oh, you've got 4 kids. Okay. I didn't know that. I knew you had a couple of kids. I didn't know you had 4. Wow. Okay. Fair shout, man. I know it's tough. Because they all want kind of equal or more attention depending on the individual, don't they? Oh, intro, that's a nice one, Josh. The brighter your light shines, the darker shadows it creates. It's interesting, isn't it? Yes, because that becomes, what is that? Is the reaction one of envy? Is that seen as a threat when you get these against, if you're ultimately trying to create a positive experience, but then it's funny, isn't it? It does draw the darkness toward you as well. Tony Light, talking of light and dark, just face it, the Bible is true and giants existed even though it's suppressed because it would give validity to the Bible. Yeah, well, that could well be true. I personally don't have the evidence. There are stories of it. The possibilities are endless, and a lot of the Bible could well be true, in as much as it tells us. It still doesn't tell us. Still doesn't give us that many answers, and it is often, of course, down to interpretation. And who knows how much the Bible has been changed and modified and what have you over the years. I was listening to Allegedly Dave the other day in a very interesting interview, and he was talking about how the Old Testament was actually created after the New Testament, I think, but some interesting stuff in there. And yeah, there's mythology here of giants and all sorts of creatures, and just like the other day we talked about these other realms and things. So I think ultimately that is this realization. We're in a realm, and obviously we're all looking for a purpose. We're all wondering what that purpose is, and we also realize, and I think many people realize throughout their life, so many people do realize that they are not fulfilled with the things, especially the material things that we are told do give us some kind of purpose, whether it's a label, whether it's an academic achievement, or a certain license you might have. Sure, these are things that are recognized for effort, but to be honest, that happens anyway in life, regardless of whether you have a piece of paper to prove it or not. Things become established. Word of mouth is always a really good barometer. You might well have a degree, you might well be a lawyer or something like that, but that still doesn't, there's still a lot more to it. It's still a lot more depends on your conduct. Again, are you following the eightfold path? Are you having the right thought? Are you having the right speech? Are you having the right actions? These can all happen under a certain label. So we know that if for example we go with that idea of lawyers, they all come in different shapes and sizes, and they have different specialities. Whether they're qualified or not, it will come down to experience, wisdom, and again those attributes that you might be looking for. Of course, if you are a bona fide criminal, then you will want a lawyer that really isn't interested in true justice. They're just in it for whatever they can get away with. And again, who's to say what's right or wrong? Are our official punishment and legislation and litigation systems necessary? Do they actually resolve anything? If someone's committed a crime and they've served a certain amount of time, they are then a free individual, and they are then able to go about their lives unhindered. and it's almost as if that is expunged from their record, whatever they've done. But really, ultimately, what would be the indicator would be whether they have remorse. If they hurt or harmed someone, do they have remorse? Do they have a desire to fix it, to do something about it, or do they continue with their behavior regardless of whether they've served their time or not? And will the karmic implications of what they've done then have repercussions? Again, this could be regardless of what they've done, or what time they'd served, or the punishment that they might have endured, devised by man. You could, if you like, only say that you only answer to God, or you'll accept God's punishment, what have you. Okay, fair enough, whatever. But I think either way, we do create very much our own karma, don't we? It's an ongoing process, and this again comes down to the training that you're doing on a daily or a moment by moment basis. If you've entered that, if you've entered that pathway and you're trying to walk that path, it's often it's one step forward, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps backwards, and then you're forwards again. It's a gradual process of trying and retrying. And so nobody ever becomes perfect, really, possibly, but there does seem to be more of a purpose that you can then identify with on a more knowing level, on a more intrinsic kind of level, where ultimately you will encounter less of those feelings such as anger, resentment, jealousy, even grief, for example. And it can get a bit kind of what's the word? It can get a bit more controversial in your own mind, because you might get to the point where you think, well, do I deserve to be happy? Because this happiness is ultimately what happens when you don't have depression, or you don't have anger, or you don't have these negative emotions. Then obviously there is a kind of neutrality as well, but there's more of a lean towards happiness. So then comes the question in your own mind, do I deserve to be happy given what I've done in the past? Should I be paying some kind of penance? Should I be punished? Or then you might also become worried about the punishment that you face at the end of this life, the karma that you've got to deal with once you die. Have you done everything? Well, obviously there's certain things you can't do, but again, these kinds of questions do come down to the conditioning that we've experienced, especially when it comes to the Christian mindset of the heaven and hell, and you'll be punished by God, and then the God's punishment is kind of decided by man's word in the Bible. So when you say statements like the Bible is true, well, you don't know that to be true. You don't know that statement to be true. There might be a lot of truth in it, but again, it comes down to interpretation. But the truth really is that we have an experience in this realm that does very much depend on how we perceive ourselves as having that experience. Are we a victim? Do we identify with a certain profession or qualification or status? Because if you do, then you are going to suffer, and your life is going to take a certain direction. But again, the suffering can bring about these realizations, because we're all on different paths and we're all having different experiences. and we're all suffering. There's no doubt that again, this is that first noble truth, which is really fascinating, is that you will experience suffering. Everybody experiences suffering, and animals experience suffering, and plants experience suffering. We all experience suffering in this realm. That is a given. And so the thing is that you have to have that realization that the suffering in many ways is often an illusion, aside from, of course, things like being born into a physically painful experience, or maybe you're born into starvation and things like that, poverty, or abuse and things. Of course, there are these multitude, infinite levels of suffering, and that's the thing. You can't then really say that God, however you perceive God to be, as a benevolent being, but you can see this realm for the truth that exists within it, and our experience in it is that we will definitely experience suffering in many ways, in many forms, and the extent to which we suffer could be down to things that we just don't know or can't make head or tail of, because we don't remember usually the life before, if there was one, or the experiences we had before. So maybe, for example, a plant or an animal, whether it's an animal that's born into captivity or it's going to be slaughtered, maybe possibly, if it's raised just for its food or its eggs and kept in horrible cramped conditions, it could be, rather than a benevolent God, that this realm is one where we will experience suffering no matter what. So the degree of suffering that we experience could be down to a myriad of reasons, and it could be down to it could be karmic implications, and that's not necessarily something that needs to be proven in any way. It's just a possibility. But again, the fact is we will suffer. So again, when you identify with a belief, or you identify with a culture even, you are going to experience suffering. If you if you continue to be closed-minded about that, or even unconscious, not aware, in other words, of how that cultural conditioning influences your everyday thoughts, actions, words, and so on. Yeah. So, and this is the freedom. This is what's so exhilarating about this. Whether it's flat Earth or other realizations, of course, it's very depressing, and there is a process we all know about, where you go through the denial, you go through the death, you go through the mourning, and there is the depression that follows, because you're giving up the old self, and there is a bit of a vacuum, there is a space, there is this emptiness that's left, because you are leaving behind something that you were very attached to, because you identified to it. Yeah. So again, we see that, and I suppose that the training that, well, not the training, or the discipline that would then come is to not get into those arguments, not to try and prove a point. Again, it would be futile often to do that with someone who is set in their belief. So again, it's more a letting go, move on, leave them. There's nothing you can do, even though you might want to play your role in saving the world or freeing the masses. It's probably not going to happen until you completely let go. And for example, there are a lot of famous monks here in Thailand, past and present, and when they're in flow, when they when they really are, they become conduits. They become conduits for this intuitive knowing and knowledge. And again, this is a science. This is something that doesn't have to be written down. It doesn't have to be in a Bible or a manuscript. I mean, it often is, but it doesn't have to be, because that knowledge is always there. It's always there, and it only arises and appears when you let go, or when you're not putting up your barriers of belief. Yeah. And so, and that's maybe the wonderful thing about the Thai culture. There is that, for example, monkhood is encouraged. It's allowed to be. It's part of society. So society supports it, and it doesn't need government support, although it has it. And so, but you know, the temples and the monks are well supported financially, and it's amazing how much money that they can raise sometimes through people contributing and donating, and this because it's just part of the culture that all the help is given that's needed for those people that are in the monkhood to spend their time concentrating on and focusing on following the middle path and leading a life of righteousness for their own benefit, for humanity's collective benefit, or just because that is what we're supposed to be doing here. Yeah. So it's supported. The alms giving in the morning, the monks go around and people give their food, and in a way they're making merit, they're providing for someone, and the monk is then fed. He doesn't have to worry about going out and finding food. He can then focus on meditation and things like that. But of course, there's also the understanding that the layman, the lay person is also necessary. Yeah? And again, you can't stop progress, and all these different aspects, all these people doing their things and having their journeys and evolving society. It is an ongoing process, and it's okay, and it will go where it will go. But we always, as long as we approach it with mindfulness and detachment, and make the disciplined effort not to identify with anything in particular, then it will carry on. It's okay. Whatever happens is the waves and the troughs of the way things go. And whether it's eternal, whether it started a few thousand years ago, whether there was a reset or not, does it matter? And you know that people will always be pushed and motivated by egotistical means. And again, that's okay, because it has many benefits. It brings many things. And for example, people meet and cross paths in the most extraordinary ways. And these things happen, and they happen when they're supposed to happen. And so, of course, we're often worrying about this and that, and maybe being late for appointments, and worry about what people think, or that person will be upset at me or disappointed, or they won't think highly of me, and all these other things. We get so wrapped up in these worrying concepts, which do manifest physically as well. The worry doesn't really change anything. Things will happen as they are supposed to happen. Well, again, that's arguable, that's debatable, I suppose, because you can always change. You can always take, left, right, middle path. Yeah, it's there are always options, and the outcomes are possibly quite infinite. Yeah. So So yeah, Tony Light, that was a long answer to your claim that the Bible is just fact, Tony Light. Okay, let's try and go through the Glenn Souch. Hello. Oops. Okay, I'm getting a Skype school, so a Skype call, but I'll carry on with this for now. I'll wrap this up soon, though. What's this one? The Chikava. I call it True Earth because all we really know is that it's not what we have been told. Fair enough. Nice one. Nicely put. Thank you for that. One man again. Things should be what we discover for ourselves, not what we are told. Absolutely, one man. Glenn Souch opening the mind's eye. Yes. Chilster Deluxe. One of them penny. Okay. I'm not sure what the pennies and min. Okay. Yeah. What do you got? Who have we got? Okay, nice little banter going on there between one man and the others. Yeah, one man, but it says, but it can only be protected with more lies. Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? You see the lies. Hello, Rich Spillman. Yeah. What's that? Tony Light says, when I heard Flat Earth, I thought it was the most idiotic idea until I looked into it myself. Okay, cool. Thanks for sharing that, Tony. It's interesting. I didn't. I was just like, it was. I was enthralled by it, but I'd already. It was funny because I was at a certain stage where, I'd been through a lot of the kind of, the monetary system and. The straw man thing with the natural person aspect, the banking, the Alex Jones, the David Icke, and the spiritual teachers, all these things, and of course everything that I was experiencing here in Thailand, in a very Buddhist country, and with a mix of Islam as well, and other aspects of that, and the way Thais just deal with all these things in a very nice middle path way. And when Flat Earth came along for me, I was chomping at the bit because even I wish I could think of some of the other guys that have contributed to this, whether it's there's an Irish guy, I wish I could remember his name. He'd done this is the people that were doing research before the internet, the people that were going to the libraries and unearthing things and making presentations. Oh gosh, I wish I could remember his name because he was also very influential, well, not influential, but so much information. All these people that have contributed in their own way by doing research, yeah. And so I got to that stage. It's like, well, okay, what's next? Okay, I get it. It's all kind of, it hadn't fallen into place. It's like, okay, could be aliens that put us here. What about the pyramids and things like that, the moon? It was all a mishmash, and it still didn't really make sense. And then Flat Earth just really brought everything down to earth. It was really there was so much, maybe it's often called the mother of all conspiracies, because yes, you then see that everything else is, if you realize that everyone has been caught up in this globe lie, then of course, as I think one man was saying earlier on, it's just another lie. Everything else under that is just imaginary, delusionary. And so that's when all of this fell into place, and it was at a time when I was really desperately asking myself, okay, what's next? Now what? Okay, this isn't complete, and it's still not complete but the journey is, there's much more of a clear pathway on the journey. Yeah, and that's more about, and it's not about the actual shape and dimensions of the Earth, because as far as I'm concerned, that there is a lot more to discover for sure, but it's not necessarily something that we will or have to necessarily know, or that would benefit us any more because okay, you could assume that there's other entities, there's other life forms. They could be across the water, beyond an ice wall. They could be in another pond. They could be just on another piece of land not far away, or they might have been wiped out and we might be the only remnants, or we might have been put here. We might be fallen angels. We might be this, that, and the other. Actually, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The history is kind of irrelevant, because it's the now that's relevant. It really is the now, isn't it? And as we've seen, if people had that consciousness and awareness, and many did during these last few years, we've seen the unconscious follow the mainstream narrative, and we've seen also a huge number of people standing up right from the start and saying, stop and think and look at what you're doing. Do not get involved in all this. Do not get carried away by the propaganda. So, and that was in the now. So there has been a lot more obvious awareness and consciousness of the now, rather than regret. There's been pre-gret, as it were, rather than regret, because you know what's coming. You know that if people just follow what they're told to follow, or believe the science, then the consequences could be catastrophic. And all you can do is again, many found out, many of these very well-intentioned people with the megaphones and things shouting at the people lining up, they realized that doesn't, the best intentions, they had to find a way. And ultimately, I think many of us found that it only ever happens on an individual basis. It's up to that individual. When you're talking to someone one-on-one, rather than talking to a crowd, there is a huge difference. It's quite interesting. It's an interesting exercise in crowd psychology as well. And so this is the kind of realizations, or the progress many of us have made on this awakening journey that we're each individually taking. So that should be celebrated and embraced. There will always be people that follow the narrative because it's comfortable, or for whatever reasons, and you know that it's based on fear most of the time, because it's fear of losing the old persona, losing identity, which they've become attached to, and all these things, fear of letting go, all these other things. That's the thing. When you let go in your mind, you don't fall, you float. But of course, in our physical reality, you think if you let go, you're just going to go whoosh, flying off or flying down, off the roller coaster. But actually, you can just let go, and you'll still you'll stay on the roller coaster. Yeah. So it's a journey. Let's carry on reading, going through the chat here. Chilster, okay, you'll watch it later, okay. Scotty Dog, thank you, sir. Okay, just see who else is in here. Okay, AR23. Oh, thank you. Scotty D, New Year's, April the 1st. Yeah. Rich Spillman, Tony Light have done a bunch of investigating with airplane altitude indicators, gyros. Yeah, they prove the flat plane. Yeah, absolutely. You don't need to know too much about them. It's just obvious. I mean, if an artificial horizon is showing you level, and it shows you whether you're doing this or this, and it doesn't change. Level is not a curve. Straight is not a curve. Flying straight and level is not flying a curve. Yeah. You still shake hands with folk, Chilster? Okay. Rich Spillman, everyone goes through the steps of grieving the deflated ball. Yeah, I suppose so, yeah. And yeah, it might be, again, it would depend, wouldn't it? It would depend on your attachment to it. I think, I would imagine for many of us, it wasn't that much of a big deal. Of course, it's it's a struggle to let go, or it's very difficult or challenging to not immediately see the earth as a ball. For example, where was my little thing there? If I hold this up, it's a cow, right? You see it as a cow. Now, if I held up a globe, I don't have one to hand, you would say earth. Yeah. So, boom. Or if you said earth, you would you say the earth, and a picture of a globe comes up in your mind. That's what's been put in there, just as this has been put in our heads as a cow. And okay, it is, but we don't see the earth like we can examine this cow. This is another thing that is very simple to understand, that we can look at all this from all dimensions, and we can recreate something that definitely looks like a cow that we will see in the real world. Definitely, there's no problem identifying this as a cow or a bovine, or however you want to call it. Okay, it's definitely meant to be a model of a bovine that we would see in reality. But then when we are told the earth is a globe, that's not something we've ever seen. So this is something that it's a very, very simple difference of discernment, which unfortunately many people will not see. Here's a cow, we know it's a cow. I have a globe in my hand and you go, oh, that's the earth. But that globe is an illusion, it's an image, it's a projection, it's a mathematical concept that can be used for convenience, for navigating, direction, latitude, longitude, all that stuff, time, so and so on. But that's not the world that we know, and it's not the world that we live on. Actually, it's just a projection. But it's different, because we can be in space, we can see this cow from the outside, but we can't see the earth as you're looking, in the same way that you're looking at this plastic cow now, can you? You can't actually see the earth. But of course we see a globe and we automatically, we hear the word earth and we automatically assume a globe. So that, I think that was leading on from yes, there's an attachment there, but it's how emotional that attachment is depends on a lot. But obviously one thing you might have seen is that for a lot of people, just a rocket going up in the air is somehow proof of the globe. This identifies with the globe belief, rockets. Of course, because we know that they're supposed to do orbits and go around. We know that's what they're supposed to be doing once that rocket goes out of sight. But again, this is really, really, really simple stuff. It's like what happens once things are out of sight. And we're seeing it from our earthbound perspective. We're not seeing these things happen from outside. We can imagine it, and we think we're smart for being able to imagine it. But anything could be happening, and so again, it's really, it's that discernment, isn't it? It's having that discernment that you do not actually know, just because you see a rocket going up, that it is actually then going around a spherical earth. You have no idea and no way of proving that, and that's just reality. That's just something that you can accept, whether you believe in the globe or not, or whether you other ways that you think you can prove the globe. But things like Cavendish experiments to say mass attracts mass and all these other things are not proofs. The proof would be, here's the cow, this is a cow, this is a model of a cow, you can go and see one in reality. Okay, there's a cow, and there's another one that looks similar to a cow, and that's got horns. This kind of thing is really easy to prove. Yeah, but it doesn't matter what kind of expert you are in navigation or flying or earth seismology, geology, history. It doesn't matter what kind of expert you are, or astronomy. Doesn't matter. That doesn't prove anything. It doesn't give you the outside view of the earth, the same kind of view you can have of a cow, a model cow, and a real cow. where you can really make that comparison. It's funny, really, isn't it, that you have to kind of highlight this, but I think it's something that you don't realize unless you start thinking about it, and you have that investigation, that discipline. You're trying to discipline the mind not to go off and believe certain things. Yeah, it's just the way it is. Without any judgment, there's no need to be emotionally triggered by it. So again, going back to that point, if anyone is attacking, being sarcastic, saying you're stupid, you're this, you're that, yeah, or I know better because I'm this, or because I'm that, or because I've studied this, or because I've studied that, you can do maths. You're just identifying with that ability, with that perception. Yeah. Just trying to. Sorry, the phone's okay. So, AR23, you're in Argentina, so we need to do a sun moon observation. Okay. Okay. V. Thomas, hello. Those who tell stories rule society. Yeah, we're often swayed by stories, aren't we? The emotional ones make more difference, don't they? Yeah. Yeah, some great comments there. Guns of Navarone, Robert. Cheers, Nick. Thank goodness you are streaming now during Arwen's show. I seriously cannot. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Yeah, I don't really like to make comparisons and stuff, but I appreciate the nice sentiment there. Borders are for races too. Boris Chops, hello, long time no see. All right. Rich Spillman. What's that? There was also a YouTube vid by the US Army showing how the indicator should work, but if it did, blind instrument flight would be impossible. Okay, you're okay. Talking about. Okay. Scotty Dog, I'm on fire. Life is usually what happens when you're busy making other plans. Yes, it's a very succinct comment, that, isn't it? Because yes, you're constantly worrying about things and what have you. Chilster, I find that the things that happen bad turn out to be blessings in disguise. Absolutely, absolutely. So often, people say, I wouldn't, I've had this has happened and that has happened, but I wouldn't change it, because you know that it's formed who you are. Of course, yes, there are things that you might want to change, and things you realize later on that, well, that would have been okay. I could have dealt with that, but you didn't, or whatever, something happened, you didn't take that path, and that can't be helped, can it? And that can be certain things can be traumatic. You missed an opportunity, or you let someone down, or something like that, or it could have been even worse. These things can plague your conscience. It can plague your conscience for forever. There are certain things that you might they just become stuck, thought patterns, memories, and you do maybe they can affect you. Understandable, it happens. One man says, could it be the human body is more of a gel cell for the soul? They say our body is made up of cells. Are we in some interesting? Yeah, well, I said, yes, in many senses, right? And I suppose, yeah, we are trapped and we are limited, although we are very capable a lot of the time. And it's interesting, isn't it? Certain, for example, if someone's maybe born disabled, or they have an accident, or they lost an arm or a leg or something, and then some amazing scientist or something, or doctor comes along and rebuilds them. It's amazing how those kind of things can come together. That does actually remind me of this story of the do you remember the Thai football team that got stuck in the cave? They've had a good movie. It's actually a very good movie. It's quite good. The Cave Rescue, yeah. This really happened, and I know from experience, my daughter in the volleyball team, they treat, you know, when someone's on a sports team here, the kids in the sports team, they spend all their time together. They are literally together 24/7 for many days and weeks at a time, and they do everything together. And so the coach becomes like a second parent, really. And so what was fascinating about that story is that, okay, these guys, you could say that whatever, the guys, they should have checked about the rains and the flooding before they went in, and he got them into danger and all that kind of stuff. Yes, you could blame, but ultimately what happened is you had this massive rescue operation, and I think it's such a coincidence in a mystical kind of way that the two divers that from England that came over to help, one of them was a qualified and well-trained anaesthetist, and it was his skills as an anaesthetist that were needed to get these boys out of the cave underwater safely. Basically had to put them to sleep so that they could carry their bodies out through these cave systems into safety. And so, you know, the coincidentally, this diver having the skills to dive such a difficult cave system and the ability to the skills and the knowledge to get these kids out, I find that so amazing. And if you listen to those guys telling their story now, they really feel that, or at least I know one of them felt that that was what his whole life had been building up to, that moment, and it was, you know, they got all those guys out alive. So it's a wonderful example of and it's so fascinating that it happened in a country like Thailand, where karma and all these things are very much thought of as being, it's just naturally, that's the way it is. These things happen, and because it's a Buddhist society, there was no animosity against the coach. The parents didn't feel animosity against the coach. There was a lot of faith that it would be all right. So it eventually was, and I suppose there's that intrinsic belief that again, these things happen for a reason. They're supposed to happen, and that's just the way it is. So there's no blame gaming. There's no court martials and litigation and such, which you might have had in the West to try and justify something, or to try and mete out some kind of fairness or something, or punishment. It's again, you can leave those things in nature's hand. And when I say nature, I suppose you could say nature you could use as a replacement word for God, because it's not a person. It's not necessarily supposed to be benevolent, but it's the universe doing stuff. Yeah. Okay. Okay, Rich Spillman. Yes, thanks for your agreement there about suffering. What's that? AR23, I respect the fact that Santos is on board with FE, because I wondered why the likes of David Icke did not bring up the FE in the past in his books, so he became a red flag. Billy Meyer too. Yeah, again, it doesn't matter too much to me whether they end up saying, okay, the earth is flat, or I'm a flat earther. I think because ultimately it's the earth is a realm in which all these mysterious things happen, and there's a purpose, and we're all having our own path. So it doesn't really matter. It doesn't. That's the thing. You know, ultimately, the actual shape of the earth doesn't really matter that much. What matters is the understanding that we're in a realm. And we should definitely, I'm sorry, I'm just lighting up this thing. We should definitely be looking toward treating this experience as a learning experience, as a college or something. Again, whether we are aware of it or not, that awareness can come about and say, I'm in the classroom. Okay, I better get my head down. I better study. Yeah, it's like that realization you have before your exams. You know, you might have just been skiving off, and then you get closer and closer to the exams, and you think, okay, all right, I better start taking notice now. And so really, I think a lot of this is also, it's just about growing up. You know, it's common to talk about the globe and referring to that as being similar to the Tooth Fairy or Santa Claus and what have you, because they are illusions and stories for kids. Yeah, and so, well, what's the alternative? Well, there's not necessarily an alternative. I think, you know, in many ways, you know, that there's a spiritual world, and it's okay to let kids think about things like that. Maybe there are other entities around us, and fairies and what have you. Who knows? Trolls, in the real sense. All those kinds of things. They may well exist, whether they are in a kind of a dimension or a frequency that we can't see. Anyone who's done things like mushrooms or acid or whatever will have had that realization that you can see a lot more going on. You can see waves in the air. You can see kind of frequencies. You can see light. You can see pulsing. You see things. You see so much more going on with these wider pupils, taking in a lot more of the information around us. And so you realize that, wow, in our normal existence, when we're not in that kind of state, there's all this stuff is still going on, but we're not necessarily seeing it or hearing it or feeling it, yeah, because we've got all these filters on. So just to reflect on that point about David Icke, for example, I mean, you've got to again, everyone's on their own journey, and everyone's bringing something to the table that has been very helpful on our journeys. And then so you don't have to, again, if you kind of wholeheartedly went with every single thing, then again you're just falling into a belief pattern, aren't you? It's still up to your own exploration. But you know, for someone like David Icke, for example, I mean, he's at least understood that this is a realm, and it is a realm that is affected in ways, and there's a history of it, and there are obviously people and bloodlines and all these other things and entities that try to influence human behavior as a herd, compromising those individuals, trying to shut down certain people. I've never really, you know, when people talk about gatekeepers and things like that, I don't really jump on that bandwagon, because to me, they are people, they are gurus, they are prophets that have done their own line of, again, you can't expect someone to, no one is going to know everything. If someone's done a line of research, and if David Icke, for example, has always followed the research and allowed himself to be open to the things that he finds, there is so much information that he has brought to us, and so many things that we can consider and think about. And then, okay, all right, yeah, that makes sense. Whether these bloodlines come from Egypt, and the symbology that they're using in the priesthood today is the same as that, or it's been compromised or added on, or added or put on at a later date, or changed or manipulated. Again, these are all great things to consider and take on board, and fine, it helps to build the picture, but we're still building, each of us is building our own picture. So as far as I'm concerned, they've done, each of those people have served a certain purpose. Their raison d'etre has been realized, and that's fine, because no one's going to become a godlike guru, are they? No one's going to have all the answers, and I'm sure certainly none of us have all the answers. And what we're doing here, and what I'm doing now, is just sharing those experiences, and there's always something in the comments that, okay, someone's gone in a certain direction and learned this, or they've heard that and they've studied this or that, and that's fantastic. And that's what this is all about. It is an exploration of our earth, our realm, our history, our society, and all that. And it all comes together. So it's a wealth of knowledge that we're building up, and that's fantastic. And everyone has something to add to the chapter, or a chapter to add. Okay. Rich Spillman's, that's a very good point. Even in striving for pleasure, there is a suffering of some kind. Absolutely. And yes, of course. Yeah, you could go off on that. There's so much suffering in whether you want to have another, you want to get drunk, or you want to get drugged up, or you want to have sex, or you want this or that. That's suffering in so many ways. And of course, it's all very well to say, right, to be stoic, to stoically refuse yourself that. And that can also be a form of suffering. It's like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to sleep with that person, or I'm not going to do this or that. That can be there's something beyond that, because you have to detach from all those forms of suffering. And the only way that happens is with continual disciplined approach. But again, resisting the temptation all the time is kind of a form of suffering as well. It's kind of, sometimes it's like going down the rabbit hole and then coming back up again, isn't it? You go down, there's all these things, and well, the thing is, if you kind of took on everything and you tried to become everything that you are supposed to be, then you're kind of forcing yourself into this unhappy situation, right? You ultimately have to come back up and let go. And all right, that's there. And this might relate to something like veganism or something, and then maybe start abstaining from meat, and then you might go back to it or whatever. Especially if you go back to that idea, well, okay, animals are having their own form of suffering, they're living out the karma, and you're in some way instrumental in that by again, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, I'm not advocating either way, I'm just saying that it's something that you can think about, and you don't necessarily have to feel guilty of going back on certain things that you might have thought you had to do in order to gain certain merit or enlightenment. But obviously, if you can discipline yourself to the point where you are abstaining without the effort, then that is more like you've reached your goal. So if you've lost the craving, I often see people say, 253 days sober, and it's like, or I quit smoking 72 days ago, and it's like, well, you haven't quit. Your habit is still there. If you're still counting the days, your addiction is still very much with you. I always say to these people, just stop counting the days, and then you will be free of your addiction. Yeah, it's really simple. So if they're still fixated on, okay, it's another day, it's another step without the booze or without the cigarettes or whatever, then, well, you're still thinking about it too much. You're still addicted to it. You haven't let go. The cravings should have disappeared a long time ago. The physical cravings for cigarettes. I mean, yes, for example, it takes a week or two, but when you're ready for it, then you can let it go, and that's it. You let it go. There's no point in counting the days. If you're still counting since your last drink or whatever, or you can't have one drink without then having another and another and another, and just enjoy the taste of a drink for what it is, and then leave it at that, then you're still stuck. You're still in that addictive state. Yeah. So yes, there is discipline. There is a certain amount of effort to get to a certain point. But then, as you were saying, I think it was Glenn or one man, I can't remember. Then there's the suffering that you experience suffering in trying to cling on to that mindset or the discipline that got you to where you are. You have to then change and adapt. So there is this progression do you see what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Yeah. That's how I see it anyway, because, yeah. Okay, just going back through, carry on with the chat here. Tony Whitcomb, hello. Drones from beyond the fence, says Chilster. Scotty Dog, a spade's a spade, even if you can't dig. AAR23, I see on some other channels there has been a lot of in-house fighting when we are all are relearning. Yeah, it's a shame that, again, egos get in the way. Healthy debate is fine, discussion is fine, But yeah, the infighting comes when people have become, prematurely fixated on a certain idea, or swapped one belief for another, or have gone about this in a certain way with a purpose in mind. And so, yeah, there's still that egoic attachment that occurs. Again, it's a learning process, like you say. Yeah. Dean Floyd, funny, fact isn't a biblical word. Check out the definition between truth and fact. Quite eye-opening. Okay, there you go. Nice one, Dean. Thank you for that. Difference between fact and truth. All right. Yep. Okay. What's that, Chilster? All the vids about FE came up all the time. I'm like, what's this nonsense? Not even going to look at that. Really? Okay, you were one of those. It's funny, isn't it? Yeah. I just couldn't wait to get into that. I was definitely ready for it. Oxbow Spirit, hello. The belief of an inverted reality, level is curved, 2 is 1, up is down, stationary is movement, etc., hinders the mental growth of the individual. A weak mindset is easily absolutely really good point, Oxbow, because yeah, it goes back to that discipline. You have to have strength. You have to be strong and disciplined to break free, to break down, to scientifically break down that, what's the word I'm looking for? Deconstruct, yeah, the globe, yeah, and all the other stuff. Of course, the globe is not just the physical shape; it's the whole thing. But globalism, it's the whole global culture, the way that global thing is in our lives. Hello, Ack. Radio 419, stretch the flat earth night with Jedi garden lights. Yeah, my red lightsaber lights. Yeah. What's AR23? When I found out, I looked at my photos from the Alps, then the Himalayas, and the photos out the window, then the Bible, and I was into all esoteric books. Even old illustrations were geocentric. Yeah, it's great. It's fascinating, isn't it? That's again what you want to share, isn't it? You want to share that that renewed rediscovery of looking at the world in a new way. You've lifted the veil, you're looking at it in an unbiased way. Yes, it's flat, and that's mirroring, that's convergence, that's a horizon at eye level, those are stars. We don't know how far away they are. They could be this, they could be that. We can recreate them in a lab in this way and that way, but not that way, and so on. Or the so-called Coriolis could be just the same as the sun going around. All these things, yes, they all these abilities to perceive what's going on in all different ways is brilliant, because boom, all of a sudden you're let free, you're unleashed to think of all these things. You really have broken free from the gravity of the heliocentric model. Scotty Dog, I'd rather wear bigger shoes than smaller ones. Nice one, yeah. Okay. And what's that, Tony, like? If heaven and hell is truth, would you risk your eternal destination for at most 100 years on earth doing what you want and not what the God of the universe told you to do? Hang on a minute. Let me try and get my head around that. If heaven and hell is truth, would you risk your eternal destination for at most 100 years on earth doing what you want and not what the God... It's an interesting question. You're talking about kind of like rather, just doing what you want rather than following your destined path. But then the whole free will thing, the choice, are we, we're not aware that whether we did make a choice before coming here, being born into this realm. And it becomes complex and unanswerable. But it's of course it's an interesting concept to think about. That even that's the thing. Even if you do what you want, maybe that's the path you were supposed to take. Maybe that was the lesson you were supposed to learn, and that's okay. Yeah, on the big scheme of things. Yeah. Ice Wall, Flat Earth, War Machines. Okay, I'm not sure what you're referring to there, but I'm sure it made sense at the time. Okay, Tony Light, I won't risk it because I know personally the power of God. Yeah, does that make you God-fearing? Does that, the power of God, again, is that the power of karma that you're talking about? Really, I would say that's a definite, the power of karma. And again, you're talking in that sense, you might be talking about some kind of judgmental process where, when we think about these things about right and wrong, sinning or judging, or who's judging us, it's not one, again, it's not one that you can really answer. And again, that's why feelings of guilt and stuff, or this idea that you don't deserve to be happy, that you've got to sacrifice certain things and you've got to hold back in certain ways, is kind of, or punish yourself in certain ways, is kind of, it could be a wrong path. I don't know. Again, it's difficult. It's something I ponder a lot about my past, but a lot of this is all down to accepting what we've done, accepting what other people do. Dave Hink. Okay, thank you very much for that persuasive thing there. This is a cow. So was that, yeah, a bit comical, isn't it, really, to do that? Okay. Okay, the Supreme Architect, hello. Oh, Dolly the sheep, I remember Dolly the sheep. Yeah, was that real? Did they really clone a sheep? Who knows? That could, again, that's just like, yeah, it's just something they told us, right? And a sheep for the sheep. Yeah, just look like any other sheep. Oh yeah, that's a clone, that one. Brilliant. I'd forgotten about that. Okay. The Supreme Architect. This attachment is survival for them. People believe in something that they can survive upon. Yeah, nicely said. Tony Light, AR, sadly people are ever learning and never come to the knowledge of the truth, and the truth is Jesus Christ. I've researched everything under the sun and nothing changed in my life until Jesus. Okay, that's fair enough. And again, your path, but the label Jesus, again, that has so many connotations and interpretations. And who was or is Jesus? Was it a person that was nailed to the cross? Really, was it someone that died for our sins, etc.? Was it just another guy like the Buddha, like Muhammad, like Gabriel, or whoever that were messengers or that tuned in? These are just recent examples but there's so many other people that are doing the Jesus thing, and so yeah, it's quite funny, isn't it, when you think about, for example, the Catholic Church and all that wealth. Compared to, for example, the Muslims. One thing about the Muslims is the way they dress. Their traditional dress is really because what they're trying to do is dress as people dressed in the time of Muhammad, and so they're showing their respect for that time. So whether it's with their head, whatever. There's all these things, and of course it can get convoluted, and you could talk about whether women are being enslaved and what have you because of this being covering themselves up, but yeah, again, that's up to them. We don't need to get in their face about it necessarily. Each to their own, because for the most part, for example, Muslims, they just accept, and they also know, they identify with the Bible as well, and all the characters in the Bible. They don't deny Jesus or anything like that. They've got very similar interpretations, and they understand that the story of Jesus and the story of Muhammad are all intertwined, and Gabriel, the angel Gabriel, is also part of it. So they've got no problems with Christianity, and really what all they're doing is as far as their dress and things like that goes, again, depending on who is teaching it, but essentially the idea is that is maintaining that way of life that was kind of cool and worked, or the attitude of Muhammad, and this is one of simplicity, whereas you've got the Catholic Church, which is gold and hierarchy and all that kind of stuff, and it's totally the opposite to what Jesus or Muhammad is really supposed to represent. So it's mind-boggling, really, the contradiction there in that. Hello, David. Good to see you. All right. What's that? The supreme. It doesn't have to be logical. A man on the edge, global leaders think gas can be pressurized without containment. Well, they'll say, oh, gravity's the container. Yeah, they just bring an imaginary concept into it. Okay. What's this? The supreme architect. It's not that they are just stuck. It would mean that people are robots. They are stuck because this belief's making them to survive globe survival. Okay. Uncommon sense, hello. The scientific institution is as dogmatic as the church. The method of inquiry, however, is not. Nicely said, man. Okay. AR23, Tony Light, flat Earth is the biggest change for me. All I know, there is a creator, everything else is a question. Okay, yes, I think that's part of the realization, isn't it? And it's part of the fear factor as well, that okay, you realize that you're involved in this thing where you are responsible for your actions. And of course, the frightening thing is, as we were talking about just before, is that you may have committed atrocious acts which you should have, if you were more conscious, if you were more aware, you wouldn't have committed. So yes, that can become a horrible thing to try and deal with once you have that realization that we are in some kind of intelligently designed realm that is designed for us to, as this kind of classroom for us, so and we weren't listening, and we messed up if we did things that were unconscious. So this is the thing when it comes to blame and self-doubt and victimizing yourself and all these things. It's a tough one to deal with, but maybe that is also part of the process, dealing with those. You have to at some point come to some kind of acceptance or realization. Of course, if we knew, for example, that yes, I mean, there's no doubt that life is very precious, and so this isn't to diminish the preciousness of life. But if we knew that, if we really knew when we came here, oh, I'm just having another round, it's another roll of the dice, and there'll be another one and another one and another one. If we knew that it didn't really matter, but it matters at the same time, just like it matters when you play a game with certain rules, that you play by the rules and so on, then of course things could be very different. But then that then raises the question, are we supposed to know? Would it benefit us or not if we did know? Yeah. So who knows? Is the slate wiped clean? Do we redo the karma? Oh, again, it's a very frightening concept to consider and think about, heaven and hell. But as I was talking about the other day, I think, with the Four Noble Truths, that this life is definitely a chance, and we feel it. We know that it's a chance to improve oneself, or to separate the self and the I, or the am, however you want to call it. The being from thoughts and all that stuff. That's the challenge. That is definitely the challenge. The suffering again. Addressing the suffering, recognizing the suffering, accepting the suffering, and then dealing with it. Yeah, and so being very much more in the now. When you're in the now, with presence, with consciousness, then you start following a much more fruitful path. I mean, there's someone who's keen on saying, "Oh, what has Flat Earth done for you?" Well, it's not about what. It's like it's more than that. It's the whole thing. It's the journey. It's like that's just one part of it, and it's done. It's traumatic. But it's beneficial in so many ways, because you're not trapped in so much suffering. Doesn't mean that the suffering suddenly ceases, but it's a massive step in, okay, right. You really come down to earth. There's more of a solid foundation for the next onward journey. Yeah, you're free of those delusions. You're free of all that stuff, the suffering. You're free of that suffering from the belief and the attachments. And again, back to that point where if you're angry, and even if you're a flat earther, so called, and you're angry at the people, the globers, I think it's a different kind of thing, because often when you're confronted, if you're a truth seeker and you're confronted with lies, and someone's blatantly lying to you or making up lies about you or assumptions, then of course that makes you angry, not because you're hurt, it's just because you hate lies and you just want the truth. Whereas the other way around is if you tell the truth to someone who is still identifying with those things, who's still having a very unconscious lifestyle or mental state, then the truth makes them mad. You know, the glober gets mad when you're telling them that the earth is obviously level, it's not a globe, and the things that they have in their mind that piece this globe together for them don't do any such thing. So you're not saying the truth is that we live on this flat disk. You're not saying that. You know, the truth, you're saying the truth is that the globe is a projection. We understand that that is not our reality, and that's it. The rest is open to much more exploration and question. And that truth hurts and it angers. But then if you flip it around, it's when someone tells lies to a truth seeker, that it's the lies that create the anger. Yeah, you see, so there is definitely a difference there, isn't there? Yeah, okay. Well, man on the edge, why do globe believers think level means curved? Well, no, it's not that they're just again, they're thinking that they can try and come up with something to, yeah, it's like, okay, it's a safety net, isn't it? And it's just like, okay, you just obfuscate it, and they're relieved to find a way to stick to their belief. Scotty Dog, all church spires have always had spears and perimeter tapes to protect this architechnology and was earthed to grounded. Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Yeah, it was wonderful to take my daughter around to some of the cathedrals in England. Unfortunately, there's some that we didn't get to see. We went to Bristol Cathedral. There was a couple of others we went to see, but we just couldn't get in. There was I think, Bath. There was something going on at the time. Yeah, Bath Cathedral. Yeah, there was a few we tried, and we didn't get to see inside them, but there's something very, very cool about cathedrals. I love them. Yeah. Okay, I'm not gonna say everyone's comments, just some of the newer ones. RH says it's a syndrome. Okay, whatever that is. Okay, monkey brain syndrome, says Glenn. What's that, Tony Light? Timothy 6:20. Science falsely so-called is, in the Greek, literally pseudoscience or pseudo-knowledge. This pseudoscience is nothing other than evolutionism. Okay. Man on the edge. What do people who believe in karma think dying babies did to annoy karma? Well, this is it. You see, man on the edge. You know, it's like this is the problem that you encounter when if you're trying to put that. It's like the Stephen Fry argument. You know, he's an atheist, as it were, because if you perceive God to be a benevolent being that will only grant you certain, or grant you a good life if you follow him or believe or bow down to him or her, whatever, then how come there's all this suffering from innocent people. How come innocent people suffer? How come innocent animals suffer? How come innocent babies suffer at the hands of people that may or may not be well-intentioned or bad-intentioned? Yeah, we can't answer that. And this is, for example, the Buddha didn't try to answer that. It's not, again, this is, you know, our interpretation is never going to really be an answer, because, you know, for example, that, you know, the universe, we know the universe works in really mysterious ways. It's just like when paths, for example, paths cross and then later on they cross again. These things are just, certain things happen by so-called coincidence. These are sometimes they're unfathomable. They are miraculous. And it doesn't necessarily mean that there is someone or some entity separate from us that's dictating all of this and playing us like a game of chess. The universe and all its entanglements and the way we live out these things is so complex and so mysterious that we do not have those answers. But it could be, when you think about it in that certain logical way, that if karma is a thing, then maybe you have to then live out your karma, or, you know, if in that respect. I mean, karma again is again, it's all open to interpretation. Karma is you're doing what you do. It's like for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction, but it's in the realms, in the way the universe works, it's not as straightforward as knocking two blocks together with the Newtonian balls or whatever. That's a very predictable action reaction, isn't it? You know, knocking those balls. But when you do this metaphorically in the you know, for example, you punch someone in the face in this kind of instance, the outcome could be, there's infinite possibilities. You could end up killing the guy, or you could get punched back, or someone else could come in, or whatever, or you might end up hugging and crying, or you might end up killing each other. It could go any way, right? There's never a predictable necessarily, but there is, in terms of that, there is definitely going to be every action does create a reaction, but it won't be as straightforward as those balls knocking together in that very physical, repetitive, scientific aspect. It's going to be something very much more miraculous than that, and we do not have the capability of understanding that. Or so, who knows? We just don't know why suffering exists. Again, this is why it's a noble truth. It is a noble truth. It's there's no denying it, that we, animals, humans, plants, everything living suffers, because we will struggle, we will have to overcome certain obstacles, we will have blissful moments, we will have horrible moments, we will have pain, we will suffer physically and mentally, we will suffer from desire, envy, jealousy. All of those things will happen to us no matter what. Yeah. And maybe if you die early, maybe you're only supposed to suffer a little bit, and that's all the karmic stuff left that you have to do. I don't know, but it's a possibility. Yeah. Or so, for example, I think about when I was running the fish and chip shops. It's like, well, okay, we were selling fish. Now you could talk about whether there's a difference between hunting things for sport and for fun, or hunting for eating, or farming for eating, or whatever. Again, this is something you could argue till the cows come home. But I wonder if, for example, there's me selling fish and chips. Now, will I perhaps have to spend my life as a fish in captivity, or that gets caught? Will I have to live out the same number of fish lives that I caused the death of when running my fish and chip shop? Yeah, I have no idea, but at the same time, I have to kind of accept that as that's a possibility. And there are other things that are maybe much worse than that. That's just an example. I'm just thinking that's just one of those things I think about. You know, the animals we eat, or the harm we do to people, whether it's hurting, maiming, killing, do we have to pay that back somehow? And do we have to pay back? Do you have to do that in another lifetime? And so in that case, you can imagine how many chickens have you eaten in your life? How many fish have you had in your life? Or how many things how many mosquitoes have you killed with a spray or something like that? How many, whatever. Do you have to go and live every single one of those lives that you've affected? I don't know. It's a possibility. That could be how karma plays out. And if so, well, that would take millions and millions and millions of years, and it would be kind of never ending, because then you're going to, again, lead a life, for the most part, is going to be unconscious, and you're going to have to wake up again. You have to going to go through the whole process again. So is there an end game? Maybe that's why we don't know how or why we got here, or what happened before we were born or after we die, because if we did, then we'd be, oh my God, again. It would be like, that would be another form of suffering, aside from all the suffering, but that would take it would, you know, life would take on a very different perspective then, wouldn't it, if we knew? So there has to be again, it's just like exploring space or finding out what the stars are and things like that. Really, we can have lots of theories and we can study and we can repeat, but we can't actually know. And I think, and that's not about giving up. I think the stars, for example, may well be very much more connected to our individual or collective lives than we may give it credit for. But again, that still doesn't tell us what they are, or that we could ever really find or reach the stars. Maybe that in itself is just a fantasy, a ridiculous fantasy, a distraction, a delusion that we must grow out of and ultimately realize. Maybe, for example, someone such as Elon Musk, maybe, you know, he has to get to that point where he realizes that what he's trying to do is impossible. Yeah. Whether you think he's an evil or nice or person, or he's doing everything for the whatever, who knows? It doesn't matter. Actually, it doesn't matter. He's doing his thing. He's having his journey, and the same as all these others. Whether it's the people pushing the jabs or whatever. You know, yes, there are psychopaths among us, and will they ever change? Do they remain psychopaths? Do they go into the spirit world as psychopaths? Do they? All these questions remain that will remain unanswered, I'm sure. So we do get a limit. There is a limit to our understanding. So I suppose there's, you know, the suffering that we experience can also be that the desire to find out things that we can't find out, the desire to know more than we are supposed to know. That's a form of suffering, or the desire to live for eternity. That must be actually a massive form of suffering. And surely, if you desire to live forever, or try and outlive it, or cheat death, for example, that must be an intense form of suffering. Hang on, I've got a cup of tea here, just a second. Yeah, because you're just trying to go against all that. So, wow, I hope I'm not blabbing. The Supreme Architect, it's all about survival. People believed in monsters back in the day. It was ridiculous, but they survived because of this belief. They just stick together to make them survive. Okay. David Banner, okay, it's a wonderful feeling when those mind shackles are released. It is. That's a very nice way of putting it, David. Yeah. Okay, the Supreme Architect, like, I think we seem to want to clarify that we don't project slaves upon globers. They are just people like me and you, but they want to just survive. Yeah, okay, that's a good point. Chilster, I would say karma has nothing to do with it, but you never know what the parents have been up to. Right, okay, again, man on the edge, we kind of just discussed that question. You're saying if karma is real, what did dying kids do to annoy karma? Who knows? Who knows what we did? But, you know, we suffer. You know, we can't know that. And that's up to the universe. And that might not be God. It just might be the way that it just might be, again, it might be just a program. If you want to consider this as some kind of something similar to a simulation, maybe there's programs, there's rules that can become like AI. They're very flexible. They can go in all sorts of directions. But okay, yeah, these may be just things unpredictable in that in that finite kind of detailed narrow level, as to say, okay, this person is suffering this because they did that. You really can't do that. It's not the same as saying this ball is flying because this ball hit it. It's much more complex than that. And so yeah, I've already kind of said that, I think. So yeah. Glenn Souch is replying to Man on the Edge. Interesting concept, but think of it like this: their death is a consequence to transgressions of humanity, a sacrifice to heighten our lack of awareness. Okay. David Banner says, yep, David Icke knows the game and the players, which was useful in 2006. That long ago, was it? Okay. AR23, I hear you, but David says it's a ball, and I just think it's misleading. It's the new folk, rabbit holes. Ike did wait me, but yeah, it's just a red flag. But right, it does not matter. Yeah, okay, nice one, AR23. Thanks for kind of like summarising that. Yeah, again, it's just a case of yes, yeah, we've been over it, and so yeah, I appreciate that we kind of put that together like that. Yeah. David Banner, he did skip the FE question. Yeah, I know, but maybe there's an awareness as well that, yeah, and it's kind of, that could be a strategic move, and yes, we know that his illustrations and things, and the whole thing about Saturn and the moon and all that thing is very much based on the globe, yeah, but again, a lot of what he says could also be construed as metaphorical, or it's just like stories that kind of are told in a way that we can relate to, but again, it still doesn't, if you're talking about entities and reptilian minds, or even in a physical form, it's yeah, it's still almost quite beyond our comprehension, isn't it? So it's very difficult to actually bring into any cohesive statement about reality. Yeah. One man, just like Hancock. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, Man on the Edge. I wouldn't trust David Icke as far as I could crap up a hill. Yeah. Well, again, yeah. Again, we've been over it. I think there's no need to kind of redo it. Tony Light says karma has nothing to do with their death, plain and simple. However, it's a spiritual war between good and evil, and Satan comes to kill, steal, and destroy God's people. Again, I am open to that. There's good and evil, and yes, we can be, they influence us in all these different aspects. Again, to what end? Is it supposed to be that way? Are there any consequences? Are there punishments for being evil? Yeah, it's still, yes, it's a black and white way of saying it, and it still leaves open to question as to what your preconceptions are about good and evil, and really, if you anything that you look into, any history or whatever, you see, whether it's some kind of bloodline or whatever it might be, some continuous some conflict throughout the ages, or some feud or something. There's always this back and forth, and it's, if that person hadn't done this wouldn't have happened, and so the trail of breadcrumbs becomes so scattered and ultimately irrelevant, really. Yeah, I think. Okay, David Banner just said Ike was useful before FE about cinematography. Yeah, I'd agree with you there. Yeah, I still listen to him occasionally, and of course, yeah. Actually, we've already, I think most of us are probably all caught up now, aren't we? If David Icke says something about what's happening in, with Davos or whatever like that, I was like, well, yeah, okay, yeah. Again, great for the uninitiated, but we're all. I get that's the thing. At least whether he's a flat earther or not doesn't matter. He sees it. He sees the illusions, the delusions. We've all, he's helped in that way. We've all kind of deprogrammed from that. Chilster, you're addicted to making and smoking joints. Interesting that you say it like that, because the making of them is also an addiction. It's part of the thing. Yeah, sometimes you'll see someone with a bunch of half-finished joints in the ashtray, because again, it's a distraction. Yeah, just the rolling the joint or handling the cigarette or whatever it is a distraction from a thought process. It's and that's what addictions are. They really are just these attempts to block out a thought process. And this is the thing. This also comes with the awakening. That's why addictions do eventually die down, I think, or you at least get to that point where you can put yourself through becoming unaddicted to things, because you're ready for it then. Because an addiction is usually covering up a trauma or preventing a trauma from encroaching, and so as soon as that negative thought about or traumatic thought or memory comes in, reach for the cigarette, start rolling a joint, and it's kind of, these are all distractions that we do, and I think that's what essentially addictions are. Yeah. All right. I'm going to have to wrap this up fairly soon, because I'm getting got to get back to the family. Okay, Supreme Architect, thank you for your agreement there. Yeah. Okay. More about thing there. Okay. Taboo Conspiracy. Hello. That you, Phuket Word, for your. Oh, thank you. I think you meant to say thank you, but thank you. Thank you for your thanks. Okay, just sharing the journey. We've all got a long way to go. I've got much further to go, and there's nothing. It's like, yeah, it's nice. It's just nice to be sharing this, and it's nice to know that many of us are on similar paths, and other people. Yeah, it's great. So it's just. Tony says, addiction is once again Satan putting his foot in your door and walking in. I tried everything to stop certain addictions and couldn't shake them until I gave my life to Jesus. Long story. Okay, cool, Tony. Fair enough. And that's yeah. It's like it is very much letting go. It is that where, you're on whether you're falling on your knees or whatever. And surrendering is very much a part of it, yes. And whether whoever or whatever you're surrendering to, again, may be irrelevant, and you can call it what you want. But it is definitely, again, this is some kind of science in the mind thing, and the labels that we attach to it, whether it's bowing down to Jesus or God or however you want to put, that's fine. I don't really entertain arguments about that. I'm not interested in kind of picking apart the Bible and things like that, because it's all about the now experience, the acceptance, and all these things we're talking about, the suffering, the recognition of the suffering, and then finding a way to alleviate the suffering, and finding that path. Again, the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. It's the science of living. Yeah. What's that one, man? I've been out in the sea catching eel with my hands. Man, they're slimy things, but do you mean taste great? Yeah, I don't think I've had eel. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Ak, for that. Don't forget to hit the like button. Thank you. Okay. Wow.
Is that tooth?
I think so. Yeah. Okay. No voter ID. Hello. Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm really going to have to kind of scroll down these because yeah. All right. Ooh, there's so much chat. You know what? It's already coming up 2 hours, so I'm going to have to apologize if I'm missing your chat. I'm just going to see if anyone's kind of asked anything directly. If not, what I'd love to do is kind of, if you want to reiterate something, please feel free to add it to the comments later on. Yeah, I'm just seeing if anyone's actually sorry, it would just take me hours to go through the chat, which is fantastic that you're really contributing, so thank you for all that. Oh my goodness, wow, I was so far away there. Oh, okay, there's one. South, east, rising sun. Does the earth have two poles? No idea. Okay.
Trying to read some of the comments.
Yeah, my frequencies. Hello. Okay, good to see you, man. Oh shit. Ah, I don't know what's happened there. Ah, trying to take pictures of me. Don't know what's going on there. Okay. All right. Hey guys. Okay. Yeah. You know what? Let's kind of wrap it up there now. It's just about to hit the 2-hour mark. So this is, fantastic. Thanks for coming along. Hope you're having a fantastic weekend. Hope this has been a nice thing to share, and we've all managed to kind of. It's nice. It's really lovely to see some opposing views and different journeys, but then there's also this appreciation and understanding of each other, and that's great. That's all you can ask for, right? This is what for me, that's what it's all about, reaching some kind of understanding. So I really appreciate that. To all of you coming along and being that way in the comments. Yeah. So all right, I'm gonna say goodbye for now and get back to my family. So I hope you've got some loved ones to get back to and spend some time with too. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone.
Happy Chinese New Year's.
Happy Chinese New Year. Okay. All right, and yeah, we'll speak soon. Okay, thank you ever so much. Have a great weekend. Okay, cheers.